Hello, the following video contains descriptions of a mental health breakdown, including incidents of self-harm, and it contains quite a lot of strong language. Hello, I'm Bransby.
Hello, I'm Dawn. In this vlog, we're going to talk about and share Bran's experiences of what, in his own words, was his mental health breakdown. But in particular, we're going to focus on the impact that this had on his relationship to music, his singing, songwriting, his guitar playing, and his gigging round about the city in which we live. So we're sat at our kitchen table in our house in Chester, where we've lived nearly 10 years of the 22-ish years that we've been together. So in this episode, we're going to talk about the before and the after, a little bit about what your music life was like before the breakdown, and then what happened in the aftermath immediately afterwards. So thank you very much for joining us, and we hope this will be helpful, interesting.
Yeah, I've still yet to work out exactly why we're doing this, but yeah, let's go ahead anyway.
Okay, all right. So shall we begin at the beginning?
Okay.
All right. When did you first pick up the guitar? Do you remember?
Yes. I got my first guitar when I was 18. I bought it from Baccali Music in Mould, which is still there, still going strong. It was an electric guitar. I didn't get an acoustic for quite a while, but I do remember that the first thing I did on it was start writing songs.
Why did you buy a guitar? Do you remember why? Did you just always wanted to?
Yeah, no, but very specifically the reason was because I wanted to be a pop star. And 46,
you still do?
46 I still do, yes, absolutely. No, I mean, I've always just loved music, you know, from as young as I can possibly remember. I've just been, you know, it's the thing that moves me most. The music is the thing that moves me most and gives me so much pleasure and makes me feel things that other things can't make me feel and stuff. So it's been super important to me. And then and I've always sung. I've always liked singing. You know, in church, in school, and and all that sort of stuff.
At our sixth form parties.
You were
always
singing a lot. And I'd listen to all this music that I loved as a teenager, and then sort of like, we came after punk rock, but the whole punk rock ethos was you can do this yourself. And I suppose I got that from somewhere. I've got that idea from somewhere. And so I went and I tried to do it myself. And I got a guitar and I learned to play roughly and started writing songs.
Had you always sort of had songs in your head? Were you writing songs before you got a guitar? Not really.
Sort of. I mean, yes. There were things when I was very, very little, which I am absolutely not going to go into. But there were little things that I sort of started doing at a very young age, of just trying to put sort of tunes and lyrics together. You know?
So you always had little sort of riffs going on in your head and stuff.
But then the guitar was the thing that took those ideas from being just silly things to actual songs and actual, putting together a structured song. And I still think it's my favourite artistic outlet is the song, the format of writing a song. Other people choose writing books and paintings and stuff. For me, I like the artistic form of a 3-minute pop song. I think it's
simple,
great.
Brad.
Yeah, exactly. And then that's about my attention span as well. 3 to 4 minutes, and then I'm away.
And so you bought the guitar before, just as you were moving to university?
Yeah, I can't remember the exact time, but I remember going to university with it, and I remember sitting with West Ham Dave in our house, one of my housemates in Pontypridd.
He's called West Ham Dave because he was a huge West Ham fan. I don't think that really needed explaining, but just in case.
I started learning to play guitar, and the first song I wrote was inspired by my situation at the time. It was called the Pontypridd Blues.
Because you were at the university.
Because I was at the bastion of academic intellect.
Don't plug it off!
It doesn't exist anymore, it doesn't matter. It was the University of Glamorgan at that time, and it was in Pontypridd, and I was living in Pontypridd. And I moved in the September, and I swear to God, it didn't stop raining that whole term. It was still raining by the time I left to go home at Christmas.
So were you just teaching yourself the guitar?
Yeah, I just had done the usual thing of just learning some basic chords.
Were you just from a book? What were you doing?
I think so. Yeah, I think I've still got the book downstairs, which is progressive guitar chords, which just shows you the fingering of the chords and tells you what they are. And then I would just sit with my guitar and I would just put chord progressions together and just built it from there. And they're the simplest things. And the thing is, my approach hasn't changed much. It's still the same thing because you can get an awful lot from just sitting with the guitar.
So if the first song that was ever penned by Bransby David MacDonald Williams was the Pontypridd Blues.
It was indeed.
In a seamless segue to your guitar over there.
I don't think this is going to work. But
I think it's worth just having a little listen. I believe the song is called the Pontypridd Blues. And I think it's your Aunt Diana's favourite song that you've ever written.
Is it?
I think she always remembers the.
She always remembers it. I suppose it was the first one. Yeah. So it's the first song I ever wrote. It's called the Pontypridd Blues. I don't think I've ever
just give us a
recorded it. Sort of, it's like very simple. 2 chords. That's all you need. G to A minor. And then it went. It's always raining in Pontypridd. Air turns towards you, just can't breathe. They try to cheer you up with winter sails, but there's nothing worth buying in South Wales. So my first song offended half the country I'm from. Yeah,
half the country you're from, the county that I lived in for 3 years, and the whole town of Pontypridd plus your alma mater. Excellent.
In my defence, Pontypridd is a shithole.
Don't say that. You have to edit that out. You have to edit that out. So, you weren't gigging at university.
No, I did once play a gig actually. I played a gig in Treforest in a pub there. I can't remember what the name of the pub was, and it was me and this bloke, Gordon.
Yeah, like an open.
Yeah, just an open mic night, and me and this other fella sort of wrote a song together, I think, and then we went and played it at this pub. I certainly wasn't gigging regularly at that point. I was just. But I wrote a lot of songs in that time. In those 3 years, I was prolific.
Instead of going to lectures.
Yeah, I absolutely didn't go to lectures or study or revise. I just wrote songs.
I remember we've been together quite a long time. We've known each other a very long time since we were in sixth form, but we've been together about 23 years. And I remember the very first time I saw you at an open mic night.
Was that at Telford's?
You were awful.
Right, yeah. I mean, I was, but it was... So I think it was probably one of the first open mics I'd ever played.
It was.
I think that was even before uni, maybe. And I went on stage, and my guitar was out of tune. Yeah. And I hadn't... I was too young and naive to think, I better tune my guitar before I go on stage. And I went on stage and I didn't, it was before the days of these really natty little tuners that clip onto the guitar. And I got on stage and it's like, my guitar's out of tune. And so I tried to tune it and I just made it worse. And
we were a very sympathetic audience. I was a very supportive friend.
Yeah, you were, to be fair. And I played it and it was, I do remember it, and it was bad.
The second time I heard you play was another sort of open mic night, and that was in Mould, and it was at the Pentam. And I remember being there thinking, oh no, I wonder if he's got any better.
Oh no, he's doing it again.
But this was probably about maybe 4 or 5 years.
Yeah, it was definitely after. It was post-uni, wasn't it?
Yeah, much later, after university, and after I'd done my masters, and you'd been travelling around Australia.
Yeah, and I'd learned how to tune my guitar.
And you learned how to play. And I remember you started off, you just did Brown Eyed Girl, and the whole pub in about, you had them sort of in the palm of your hands within 1 second. And I remember sort of saying to the group I was with, I remember saying to you, oh my God, you've got really good. So you were obviously playing, to get that sort of shift from that really awful gig in Chester to this lovely gig in
the Pentam gig might have been after Australia.
Which is where you played a lot.
I played a lot. I took my guitar out to Australia. I spent over a year in Australia travelling around, and I played all the time. I played gigs when I settled on this farm in Western Australia. I used to go and play at a local restaurant there, became friends with the owners, played at the local restaurant there. But
you played on the campsites.
I played on the campsites. I literally played across Australia. We used to, that weird trip I did across the Nullarbor. We'd stop at roadhouses and I'd get the guitar out and we'd have lock-ins and people just going nuts. And all it is just like playing songs that people know, but playing them well.
Yeah.
And people just respond to it.
So lots of covers, but that's sort of...
Yeah, I was doing lots of covers then, but I was still writing songs. In Australia, I was still writing songs, and that's when I went to a studio in Perth. It was friend of a friend got me into this guy's little home studio, and we recorded 3 tracks. I recorded One Night Stand, and I think maybe Rosie and The Good Life, The Easy Life, something like that. I can't remember what 3 tracks were on that, but that was the cassette that I brought home, just like stuck it on a cassette for me. I brought it home and I sent it to Les. I sent it to Fruitbat of Carter USM, because I was obsessed with Carter USM, still am.
We both still
are. And through stalking, I had somehow got hold of Les's home address, and I sent him that cassette. And that was when he took, I think, he took One Night Stand, and he wrote back to me and he said, "I'm putting together a compilation of unsigned acts. Do you mind if I put this song on it?"
Are you not going to say no, are you?
No.
When one of your musical heroes and one of the nicest men in the whole wide world sort of says, "Yes, put this on a compilation."
I mean, that was proper dream come true stuff. So he said, can I put it on the compilation? Yeah, you can. So that compilation came out on Spinach Records, one of the really early releases on Les's label, Spinach Records, and that was called "There's a Madman on the Roof." And from what I remember, I think Les seemed to say it was quite popular on the album. It was one of the quite popular tracks on the album. So he invited me down to his house to record the EP, and that's where, in 2001. I went down to Brixton, to Fruitbat's house in Brixton, and we recorded the 4 tracks that made the Plenty More Fish in the Sea EP in his house, which again, I'm still quite young. I've been obsessed with them since I was like 13, and to be sitting in his house, having him record my music and play guitar on it, and believe in me and record the songs, it's still one of the best things I've ever done in my life. It was amazing. It was amazing.
Yeah, we were about 24 then.
Yeah, we would have been about that. And
but then you were also gigging more in London, so
so I was still living at home. I was still living in North Wales, working in North Wales then. But shortly after the EP came out, I decided to go sort of like, make the move to the big smoke and become a pop star. So I moved down to London and started a degree in music technology, because I thought that's what was going to turn me into a pop star. It didn't. But I went down there and I did it, and that's when I did start gigging loads, and I was doing loads of open mic nights.
All your own stuff as well.
Yeah,
I
wasn't doing covers then really at all. But I used to go. There was this regular place just off Leicester Square. I used to go and play there loads. Just lots of little open mic nights. I was sort of on that scene doing things, and of course I would then I'd support Jim Bob as well from Carter USM. He was going on tour because he just started his solo project. He was doing Jim's Super Stereo World then, and I went out supporting him on some of his tours. Yeah, I did. Well, I did a few gigs with him. I played with Abdu Japarov, with just sang on stage with Abdu Japarov, with Les's band. So very active around London around then.
And then to cut a very long story short, we moved up to Chester, but before that we were living in London. You were working nights. You weren't doing quite as much then when you were working a lot of nights. I had
3 hours working, when I was doing night shifts and overtime, and I was just trying to clear some debt, so I was working loads of overtime, so I didn't do very much music, as you know.
You did learn to play the trumpet in the bottom
I did, yes, that's when I learned to play the trumpet.
House.
So that was when I decided that my fingers were too stumpy to ever play the guitar well, which is not true, but that was the excuse I'd come up with at the time. But I decided, I'm going to learn something else, so I bought a trumpet for 50 quid off eBay.
Okay.
So I was working night shifts, so I would take the trumpet in, and on my break I'd take myself off to a deep dark part of the building and taught myself the trumpet. So, which I still play it now.
You do. But it was when we moved to Chester, and you hooked up with a school friend, Rick White, who was already in a band, that you started. It started again.
So I hadn't seen Rick White for years, but we were really good friends at school. Met up at a school reunion and just fell back into being really good friends again, because he's a smashing bloke. And he was in a covers band at the time. He's living out in Frodsham, and he was in a covers band at the time. There were only the there were only 3 of them, and they wanted me to play cajon. Weirdly, I'd never even seen a cajon, let alone played it. But I gave it a go. I went out there and just bashed away on this box for a bit, and started doing some backing
Millions
vocals.
of cajon players are sort of going, that's what everyone thinks it is. You just stereotyped and dissed.
There's no getting away from it. You're sitting on a box and hitting it. So I did that for a bit, and we started playing gigs. And then that band expanded, and we got a drummer, and we ended up being a big 5-piece rock band, and we were doing loads and loads of gigs in and around Chester. That, and I started doing solo gigs, but all of this was covers then, and I was just learning loads and loads of covers.
Yeah.
And
you always said that was really fun because you wanted to play in a band. You've been doing an awful lot of sort of solo acoustic stuff, which wasn't quite sort of scratchy.
No, this is the weird thing. It's sort of like I don't want to say known because I'm not known, but the people who do know me for doing acoustic stuff and solo acoustic covers. And if I'm honest, I don't like it. I don't really like doing solo acoustic stuff. It's boring. I've always wanted to be in a band. So being in the covers band was great because I really enjoyed it.
It made you like doing acoustic stuff a bit more though again.
I got better. I got better at playing, and I got better at performing. I got more confident on stage and stuff. I learned a lot with that band. I learned how to be not the front man, and I learned what part you can play in a band by just doing your thing and staying playing with the band. So that was really valuable stuff.
I mean, really, it was just an excuse for 5 middle-aged blokes in their 40s to drink a few beers and to have
absolutely.
fun. Nothing wrong with that. But it was really I remember you sort of saying just before COVID, this is fun, but I want to do more of my own stuff. And it was COVID that actually gave you a bit of space
to do it.
To do that.
Yeah, so, it was weird, wasn't it? Because pre-COVID, in fact, right up to lockdown, I was playing loads of gigs. I was playing gigs with the Perpetrators, with the band, and I was starting to do loads more solo acoustic gigs. I was playing the Market the week before lockdown.
Yeah, that's right.
And it's scary if you look at those photos now, because there were hundreds of people in there.
Yeah.
So anyway, I'd started playing at the Market in Chester, and I was doing a lot more solo acoustic. And I was doing gigs sort of every, at least one every couple of weeks. Which when you're working full time is it was a lot.
Yeah.
And then everything stopped.
That's right.
And so I just thought, well, yes, I've been talking about doing my own stuff for ages, and I've just not got around to doing it.
Because you weren't really writing very much.
I wasn't writing anything. I wasn't doing anything. I had ideas. I'd always had ideas. I'd got my studio set up downstairs. I'd got all the microphones, and I'd got the software, and I knew how to do it. I've done my music tech degree. I know how to go about recording and producing stuff. I just wasn't doing it because I was doing all the other stuff. And then COVID happened. Everything stopped. And I did it. I launched my YouTube channel. I started putting all the acoustic covers up onto YouTube.
Just like writing.
And I started writing. And the first one I wrote and made a video for and everything was Those Tired Eyes. And made that really fun video that was a parody of a Zoom call and all these people joining the call.
You got all of your mates.
Loads of people to contribute little videos to go into it. And it was really good fun. It was really nice, and it was ace to sort of create something full again and not just sit there with an acoustic guitar and bash out 4 chords and start singing, to put it all together.
Feel like when you've written a song and you've landed on something?
I mean, I don't want to say it's the best feeling in the world because being in love and being with you and stuff is very, very good. but writing a song, and when you get, there is a moment, people call it all sorts of things, flow states and all that, all that sort of stuff, but there is a moment sometimes, it doesn't always happen, but there is a moment sometimes when you're writing a song and it feels like it's happening to you, like you're not actually doing it, but it's happening to you. And it's the best feeling in the world. It is just tremendous. It just feels like there is this thing that's coming through you and it's just appearing in front of you, and it sounds amazing and it sounds great. And that sounds arrogant to say, oh, this thing I'm making is sounding amazing, sounding great, but I'm comfortable saying it sounds amazing and sounding great because it genuinely doesn't feel like I'm doing it. It
so
feels like
doing it, you weirdo.
God. It says the atheist. It is weird though. It's genuinely weird because it does feel like it's happening to you, like you're just a conduit for this thing that is happening.
So do you start to hear the music first, or the words first, or does it just depend?
I usually sort of start. Those Tired Eyes started with a little riff, which is not common for me. Sort of like, and you asked the guys in the band.
Just play the little riff.
Oh, if I can remember it. I've played it for ages. But interestingly, the guys in the band will remember this because I used to play it all the time at rehearsal, and it was really annoying because I'd just be.
So that was just in your head. Yeah, I know what it's like when you get a riff.
And I was just playing that all the time. And of course I heard it, and I wrote the lyrics for Those Tired Eyes. And actually that was a weird one, because I wrote the lyrics sort of separately from writing the song. I got that riff, and that's all I'd got, and then I wrote the lyrics. And I always thought, I wrote the lyrics down as Those Tired Eyes, and I thought it was going to be this really chilled acoustic thing, so I thought, it's going to be a solo acoustic thing, I can play solo acoustic. And then I started recording it, and again it just started happening, and it just became this much bigger thing.
And when and this sort of can happen at any time, and I've looked at your notebook, and when you're writing lyrics, there's no edits. You sort of write word by word. You barely cross anything out.
Yeah, well, it's because I think, and the reason for that is because I think really, really carefully before I write anything down. The line is confirmed in my head. Yeah, the line is confirmed in my head before I write it down. I don't write it down unless it's going in the song. Very, very rare that I go back and change any lyrics. I'll sometimes add things and move things about, but very rare that I'll cross anything out.
So, really, during COVID, it was a really lovely. I know COVID was awful and it was terrible, and you would say actually that COVID, some of the feelings of COVID, while it was having this very positive impact on your writing and stuff, you were starting to feel a little different during COVID.
Yeah, so I mean, I'm sure there has already been lots of work done on this, and there will be more to come, but the mental health impacts of COVID, I don't think will ever really be understood, because there is so much going on. So technically, you and I had a good lockdown, didn't we? And it feels bad to say that, but we sort of I didn't have to travel into work. We were both just in the house. We were, enjoying each other's company and just
it felt very
getting on with
it
things.
felt we were cocooned from.
Yeah, we were safe and we were okay.
We were lucky enough
and we were
to
lucky
be
we could both carry on working, so we weren't worried about.
We got off scot-free.
We really did.
We also, I guess, it's difficult, isn't it, when we're talking about mental health, because the tendency is to want to sort of name things that happen that causes it, and we know that's not always the case.
Yeah. That's a really good point.
But COVID, perhaps, although you were being, you were having, it was a very creative time for you in lots of ways. You were starting to feel a little bit out of yourself, and then of course. I had a period of redundancies at work.
I think that's the thing that started to trigger things for me, was the uncertainty around your job and the
uncertainty of COVID and the global pandemic.
Yeah, there was this horrible thing happening to the world, where so much uncertainty, so much death, so much suffering and death, and then we came out of it, and it felt like we were coming out of this thing, and there was going to get back to normal, although I was never convinced about we're just going to go back to normal. But then the redundancies thing happened with you, and suddenly there is this bombshell dropped into our lives of this massive uncertainty around our future. We were talking about, are we going to have to sell the house? Are we going to have to what
I was asking I work at a university, I work at the University of Chester, and I was asking friends who had businesses in Chester, if I lost my job, would they give me some shifts? And you shouldered a lot of that. You were supporting not just me, but my colleagues in my department. Lots of people in the department, you're friends with people in my department, so you were feeling the impact of that, as their partners were, and their family members and friends were too. But of course you were helping us think about strategies. So that was a really, really stressful time out of a really stressful time of the pandemic. I think I started to notice that things weren't quite right, like coming out of the summer of 2021 into the autumn. What do you remember about that time? What do you remember about?
So firstly, I've got a really bad memory, so bear with me, but what I do remember is so I've always had a bit of a problem with autumn into winter, because whether you call it SAD, that seasonal adjustment disorder. So whether that with the nights drawing in and stuff, I don't feel good. It's not a nice thing, and I remember feeling that. and it escalated, and it got worse and worse. And I remember, because I remember saying to you a couple of times, and it's not the sort of thing I would normally say, where I remember saying to you a couple of times, sort of like, I'm feeling bad.
Yeah.
I'm feeling bad at the moment. And it wasn't sort of like, oh, I'm poorly, I'm coming down or something. It's just sort of like, I am feeling bad. And I started to get that sense of, I've talked about this in therapy with people as well and tried to describe it. And the only way I can describe it is I started to just feel this massive tension, sort of like, whereas I couldn't get rid of this tension, and it manifested in my back and stuff like that. But it was just, and I'm not sure when the tinnitus turned up, but yeah, it was just sort of like this huge tension first of all, and sort of like, I would get easily overwhelmed by things, and just sort of like, oh, I can't cope with this, and just feel really, really tense, but all the time having to sort of like just smile and do my best. And then I would just get these moments of just feeling very, very down, and sort of like...
You were really tired. You were starting to sleep a lot more, and I just thought that was, well, just putting that down to having a busy lifestyle. And, we live in Chester, you drive to Manchester for work. I think at the time...
I just started
going back to work a little bit after COVID. I remember things like, we'd go out on a night out, and I was quite aware that you weren't, you didn't really have a nice time, or that you were quite quiet, or that when you were sort of chirping in or chipping in, it wasn't really very you, it felt quite forced. And I'd try and talk to you about it afterwards, and you'd just say, I'm fine, or you would just say, it's fine, I'm just a bit, you'd say often, I'm just a bit tired, or you'd say, I'm just not feeling great, or I'm feeling bad.
Yeah.
And I thought, is it headache? What was it?
Yeah.
There wasn't, it was quite hard to say.
I mean, it was really hard to say, and it still is.
Yeah.
It's very hard to have, a vocabulary around it, and it's quite, you can't diagnose yourself with mental health problems. You can't turn around. I don't know. Maybe you can, but I didn't feel like I could. I didn't feel like I could turn around and say, "Oh, I've got anxiety, or I've got depression," or anything like that. I didn't feel like I could. I knew I had this horrible feeling, like a lot of the time, and I was just feeling completely overwhelmed and stressed and tense. And then the difficulty, of course, is sort of like, I look at my life and I've got everything I could possibly ever want. I've got a lovely house, I've got a loving partner, I've got a secure job that I enjoy, I can spend time doing the things I like doing, I can play, what the hell is wrong with me that I'm suddenly feeling anxious about nothing, or I'm feeling depressed for no reason? And that's why I keep coming back to, I would come back to it's just because the days are getting shorter and stuff, because there's got to be a reason. I've got to find a reason for it.
Yeah. We'd say actually it's still coming out of COVID. And
you'd say, it's the redundancies, it's COVID.
I was finding work quite difficult, so you're still finding that.
Yeah.
I think the most visible sign for me was, do you remember that time we'd gone swimming and you were, we'd gone training in Mold, in Holywell, and you were starting to say things like that you didn't really want to go to the gym and that you didn't really want to do swimming, and I was sort of forcing the swimming on you a bit. Yeah,
the swimming was always a tricky one, because I'm not a very good swimmer and I didn't really enjoy it.
No.
But I was sort of, I wanted to do it. I wanted to do it because I wanted to be better at swimming. I didn't want to be crap at swimming like I am. But so I was going to this thing, but I suppose in the mental, looking back, in the mental state that I was in, going to a place that I didn't really like and doing something I didn't enjoy was pushing it too much, I suppose. I didn't realise that at the time, and then suddenly we came out.
It was a huge warning sign for me that I felt really stupid that I hadn't noticed how difficult you were finding things, because we left the swimming pool.
So I was driving, wasn't I?
No, I was driving.
No, I was driving because we had to stop. So
I was chirpy, cheep. We did this, and then I did like 400s, and you just started crying about half a mile outside of the pool.
Yeah.
You started sobbing while you were driving,
and it was weird because it's sort of like, why?
Yeah.
And the why is such a weird thing about mental health.
We pulled over and we stopped.
Yeah.
And I tried to get you to tell me what was wrong, and you just couldn't. So we just pulled over and we just stayed in the car until you'd stopped crying.
Yeah.
And then we got in the car. I drove us home. And I think at that point I said, I think it's time you might, go and see a doctor. And you didn't want to.
No. Of course you don't want to go and see a doctor because, again, it's the thing of sort of like, well, what right do I have to be depressed or anxious about anything? Look at me. I've got the cushiest life in the world. I'm a white middle-class male with a secure job. Like, the world is designed to my every whim. Hey, patriarchy. What possible right do I have to say, oh, I'm feeling down, I'm feeling depressed, I'm feeling anxious? I've got no right.
Well, you didn't use those words at all, actually. You didn't use those words.
No, I probably didn't at the time.
You just kept saying, I'm tired, I don't want to, I don't really feel like doing that. And then it started to accelerate, I think. And we were hosting Christmas that year, and you don't like Christmas at the best of times, but it was really tricky, wasn't it? You did not enjoy anything about Christmas at all.
No.
We were doing a lot of preparation.
Yeah.
I was in slightly sort of hyper organising perfectionist drive.
So that's the thing, we can say, oh yeah, you were too much. You were just being a perfectionist. But that's
that's how you perceived it.
But the point is, it's not your fault. It's not it's not your problem.
You have no resilience or tolerance.
Yeah, so this is the thing. It's sort of like, in terms of just how I felt at the time, it's sort of like, yes, there was an awful lot going on. We were doing something with family every day. I worked right through, if you remember, I worked right through till Christmas Eve. I was working till 9:30 on Christmas Eve, and then finished work, came upstairs straight into a family party and family dinner, and then the next day was Christmas Day, and all the family around for Christmas Day. And then and there was just something on every single day we were doing.
It was building up though. You weren't enjoying the parties and the dancing and the music, and I really remember us dancing in the living room downstairs with my family round, and we put the Manics came on. And
I put it on deliberately because everybody was sort of like, let's play some Carole King. Let's get everybody playing their favourites. And it came to me, it's sort of like, what tune do you want to put on? And I put on the Manic Street Preachers' Faster, which is, one of the greatest songs ever written, but it's not a nice song. It's not a nice song. And
I remember you sort of dancing
screaming
it, and I was really worried then.
Yeah,
it wasn't relaxed. It wasn't going with the flow. You were.
I was trying to
get rid of some of the tension.
Yeah, Manics have a great line for it. Try to hurt myself to get pain out. It was that.
You also didn't want to get your guitar out and do family sing-songs that year.
Yeah.
There was a bit going on there. You weren't doing as much music.
Yeah.
I remember you saying things like, this is another reason that I knew you weren't well, not just getting upset in the car after swimming, but you were starting to not want to do gigs. You were starting to dread the gigs. Do you remember that?
Yeah, no, I remember that really vividly, and it's something I subsequently spoke about in counselling when I went into counselling. I was absolutely dreading gigs, and
it wasn't just a bit of nerves or not sure about this.
It was like
not wanting.
It got to the point, and what was weird about it was I would still go and do them a lot of the time, but I remember lots of gigs, going to play the market or whatever. And I would think I would do anything if this could just be cancelled right now, and so I could just go home and go to bed, or just not do this.
You just wanted to be at home.
I just wanted to be at home and not do anything. But I would still go out and play the gigs, and that was the weird thing, is being able to turn it on when I had to.
It was so exhausting for you.
I mean, it is exhausting. Playing gigs is exhausting, but playing gigs, and because I mean. Without wishing to sound like a tit, I give it 100% every time. When I finish a covers gig playing American Pie, all 17 verses of it, I give it my best shot. I want to make Don McLean proud. It was, I do it properly, and I throw everything at those gigs, and it's exhausting. and it's you know, when I'm feeling at my best, it's still exhausting because I want to leave everything on stage. Doing that when you basically hate yourself and you don't want to be there, I don't know how I did it.
No, I don't.
But I did.
Yeah. The feelings of hating yourself and worthlessness were really creeping in around that time. So shall we sort of, I know this is really tricky and I know you don't remember very much about it, but it might be helpful to just say the crunch point, really.
Yeah.
You call it your breakdown.
Yeah, I call it a breakdown. I have said, I know you don't like me saying this, but I have said in the olden days they would have called it a nervous breakdown, because they would have done. It would have been a nervous breakdown. Whether that's an accurate, helpful term, I don't know.
But you've always referred to it as a breakdown.
It was a breakdown of some sort. It was basically, I got to a point where I just had nothing left, and it came at such a strange point. It didn't come on like Christmas Day, when I was like having to perform to the nth degree and be happy
and be the life and soul of the party,
be the life and soul of the party.
Jokes,
yeah, exactly.
Kitchen,
singing along to all the songs. It didn't come at that point. It came. I was really looking forward that Christmas.
There was just to backtrack a little bit. There were a couple of moments around Christmas Day and Boxing Day when this kitchen was full of people, and I remember neither of us were having a particularly brilliant time, because I was being quite hyper vigilant, which is something that I don't think I've stopped being, because I knew that things weren't quite right. But because you'd got through Christmas, I sort of thought that was it.
And so did I.
This was the worst it was going to get. That was the worst it was going to be.
It's one of those things where you just think, if I can just get through this day, if I can just get through this, then I'll be fine. And we'd got through it all, and we'd got through Christmas, and everybody had gone home, and everybody had a nice time, apart from you and I. We got to the end, and what we were doing is we were going away to Beaumaris with some of our friends, and it had been my idea to go, if you remember rightly, because I thought, spending New Year in a lovely, beautiful North Wales town by the sea, one of our favourite places in the world, that will just be with the perfect work. With a couple of mates, no pressure, just go there, chill out, relax, nice. I was genuinely looking forward to it, and then even in the car on the way there, do you remember? We were driving down in the car on the way there. I couldn't cope. I was driving and I just kept my mouth shut, couldn't speak. Just couldn't deal with anything. I remember you taking a selfie of us in the car, and I was just like, I've got to smile for this. I've got to smile for this.
So what's going on inside when that's happening? Can you remember or describe it?
I can't. It's really difficult to describe. It's sort of like, I should try, but it's just like, again, I can only describe it as this tension, this sort of like, every fibre of my being is just sort of like, I want to be anywhere else but here. I just want to not be in this situation, and of course it's not the situation, because I'm just driving to Anglesey. It's not a big deal. It's not that. It's just like what it actually is I just don't want to be me right now. I don't want to be this.
So it's an existential I don't want to be.
Yeah, because
is it I don't want to exist?
Yeah, it's I don't want to exist because I just feel so horrible. It's a horrible feeling. It's just like every fibre in your being is just like, I don't like this, and of course you focus on it's because I've got to go away and go to a party, but it wasn't. It's not that. And this is what's so difficult about these mental health problems, is you look for a reason all the time. You look for the cause, and the more I think about it, the more I've examined it in counselling and stuff, is like sometimes there's just not a cause.
No.
Or the cause is not something that you would necessarily think would cause it.
Yeah.
It's so weird. And that's why it's so difficult to deal with. So then we get to Beaumaris, and we start drinking. Now, to be fair, we've got to say something about booze, because obviously over the whole of Christmas and New Year, I was just drinking to cope. It was proper alcohol for coping, which is not good. It wasn't enjoyable. I wasn't drinking to enjoy it. I was drinking to get through the day. And we got to Beaumaris, and we were chilling out in the flat and everything, and we started drinking, and we were on it straight away, weren't we? By midday we were on cocktails and stuff, vodka cocktails, they were delicious. And I can't put my finger. I don't really remember very clearly. there was a point at which I just couldn't cope with what was going on. And bearing in mind, sort of like what was going on was just four friends sitting around chatting, really relaxed in a house, in a nice house,
having some food,
with the prospect of going out to eat, so we didn't have to cook. It's like the easiest thing in the world, and I could not cope. And so it got really bad. And of course, I can't tell you, I can't tell them, because the worst thing for me would be to draw attention to myself or spoil anything for anybody else. I couldn't bear to think of that. And so what I was doing that afternoon, it started off where I would go into the bathroom, I'd go to the toilet, and I'd look at myself in the mirror and I'd be like, get your shit together. Stop it. Fucking sort your shit out. Apologies for the language, but that's the language I was using to myself. I was angry with myself in the mirror. I was just like, what the fuck is wrong with you? Pull yourself together. Which, as we've discussed in therapy in the past, is not a helpful way to talk to yourself. And I would go back out and carry on drinking. And then it got to the point where I'd go to the toilet, and the harsh words with myself were not doing it. So then, and I don't know where this came from, and I genuinely don't know where it came from, but I just lamped myself in the head. I just punched myself in the head as hard as I possibly could. And it's difficult because, it's not the right angle, is it? But I remember just like smacking myself in the head, and I thought, right, I better go for the temple or something like that, because if I do my nose or anything, it'll be really obvious that I've done it. So I just like smacked myself in the side of the head. And the weird thing, and I've said this to you and I've said it to counsellors, is it genuinely made me feel better. It genuinely made me feel better to hurt myself. And so I did it again, and I would go back into the party and I'd carry on drinking, and then I'd go back into the toilet and I'd smack myself in the head, and I would just do it again and again. Fortunately, I don't bruise very easily, so you couldn't tell that I'd done it. But it genuinely made me feel better, but obviously only to a point, because then we went out.
Did you? Actually, I remember doing a bit of research afterwards about this, and apparently
it's not uncommon, is it?
It's really common. That's how men in particular often choose to self-harm, is by either hitting their heads or punching themselves. And of course, I didn't know this was happening because you were doing. I don't really understand how you managed to go from doing that to yourself in the bathroom to then carrying on. And one of the things I can think about is, one, I might have been in some sort of denial, thinking, because I am an optimist, thinking we've got over Christmas, he's fine now. Yeah. This is all going to be over. And also, you were doing an absolute brilliant job.
I'm really good at
hiding
things. I'm really good at hiding things, which is not, a great talent to have, but I am.
But the acting,
I was acting. I was genuinely acting. I was coming out. I mean, it's a weird thing, because of course the punching myself in the head genuinely made me feel better. So I would come out and I'd be like,
got rid of it.
Yeah. But you haven't got rid of it, of course.
But that's how it feels.
But it felt, in the instant, in that moment, it felt like you got rid of it.
So when previously you might have, played the guitar to get rid of it, gone for a run to get rid of it. Yeah. Done some yoga, gone to the gym to get rid of it.
Yeah, you can't underestimate the value of exercise. You really can't.
So that was what was happening in that moment. So I didn't know this was going on at all. Now, we've obviously talked about this. It's basically when we left the flat to go for dinner, you don't really remember very much at all, do you?
No.
You remember dinner?
I remember dinner. I remember being in that pub, although we went back there recently and I don't remember it at all. But so we went for dinner, we went for food. And I sort of remember eating, and I sort of remember being okay.
Then we went to the
we went to the pub.
And you then...
this is where I sort of like things get really hazy for me.
So should I pick up?
Well, no, let me say what I remember.
Yeah.
Because I do remember bits. I don't really remember leaving the pub. I remember at some point walking up the road in Beaumaris, and I didn't know where I was. And then there was this really weird thing. I got absolutely obsessed with going to the sea and going and being by the sea, and I was.
Which
and
is
I remember,
a good job, because it's a seaside town with a pier.
Yeah. So I was walking up the road, and I was just sort of like, and I was. You will see people like me, in London on a night out, and you think, well, I hope they're all right. Because I was talking to myself, I was shouting at myself, I was sort of like, I was probably nearly crying. I remember just going, I've got to get to the sea, I've got to get to the sea, and saying it out loud.
So you could hear
I remember looking at my phone and trying to work, because I was walking in the wrong direction as well, which in Bow Maris is quite an achievement to walk in the wrong direction from the sea.
There's only 2 streets.
So I was going in the wrong direction. Eventually managed, I must have been pretty with it, because I got my phone out and worked out on Google Maps where I was and where I needed to go, and then I managed to get myself. I don't remember going down to the pier, but I remember being on the pier, and I remember walking out to the pier, and it was really windy
and raining.
Was it raining?
Yeah.
No, I don't remember that. And I remember just being on the pier, and I remember I just hold on to the railings. Lovely pier in Bow Maris, incidentally, and I remember holding on to the railings, and I was just like. Just taking big deep breaths and thinking, oh, I'm okay now, I'm by the sea, I'm okay now, I'm by the sea, and just taking, and I remember sort of trying to tell myself it was okay now, and then I just started screaming. And I don't know, and at that point I don't really remember anything else then until you were suddenly there with our friends. And I was just, Go on, what do you remember? Sorry.
It's alright. Are you okay?
Yeah, I'm okay now, yeah.
So we were in the pub, and whoever was getting around in, and you just got up, and we all assumed you were going to the bathroom, and I thought you'd gone the wrong way, but I hadn't really clocked it. And then I just remember thinking, this isn't quite right. There's something, presuming that you'd gone for a bit of fresh air or something. And then I was quite sort of looking at the door, looking at my watch, how long you'd been away. And then I think after about, not very long actually, after maybe 6 or 7, maybe 8 minutes, just saying, there's something not quite right. I'm just going to go see if he's okay. And I tried phoning you, and you weren't picking up your phone, and you went outside, and I sort of did a quick recce up and down the street, and went back in to our friends and just said, I don't know where he is, something's not quite right, he's not picking up his phone, I think we need to go and find him. Something like that. I'd been drinking a lot too, but I suddenly was starting to feel quite sober at this point. And we were with our friends Caroline and Paul, and Caroline said, do you think he'll have headed for the sea, for the beach? And I said, yeah, probably, because I was starting to worry a little bit now. We'd already sort of looked around a couple of the streets, so we walked, I think Caroline and I sort of ran to the pier. Paul was having a look around places around closer to the pub, and I remember seeing you holding on to the pier. I think you were banging your head on the railings. I could see you sort of doing that, but I wasn't, and Caroline remembers that too.
I don't remember that, but maybe.
I remember you screaming. I could hear you scream, I could hear you shouting, and Caroline stayed just a little bit behind me while I went over, and you were saying all sorts of things. You were saying things like you wanted to stop it all and start again, that you didn't want to be here, that if anyone came near you apart from me, you didn't know what you'd do, you wanted everyone away from you. You were just talking sort of non-stop. It was angry, but weirdly not angry at me. Like, it was really weird. Like, I wasn't. If I'd have seen a couple like us, behaving like that, I might have been a bit worried about her.
Yeah.
And seen if they needed help. But I wasn't. You weren't being aggressive to me. You were being kind of a little bit aggressive and violent a little bit towards yourself. So it's that sort of. The tension. The violence was in you, not at me. And I just kept on you, and then then you just sank to the floor. You were just sort of on the floor, and we got you up, and we walked you together, and then Caroline dropped back a bit, and Paul had found us by this point, and then we walked to the flat, and the whole time you were just saying the same sort of things over and over, and I wasn't saying anything. I was just holding you, and then outside the flat, I let them go up. We stayed outside, and again you were just repeating the same sort of things about how you were it was how you were going to burn it all down, how you just had to stop, how you hated everybody, how everybody hated you. It was, and your language was quite fruity, because you were just so furious, but you weren't furious at me. It was really odd. There's a really odd sort of connection and disconnection, and I remember thinking, I think I need to call an ambulance here, because I don't know what this is, and then I thought, no, we'll just try and get you into upstairs. Paul came down at one point, and you were very clear you didn't want anybody else around, so Paul sort of retreated, and then eventually you sort of just were sobbing. You just had sort of shouted and screamed and cried yourself out. So I just took you up to bed, and of course Caroline's little dog Olive sort of was sort of nuzzling and was being quite close to you and wanting you to stroke her, and that helped, I think, a little bit. So I got you undressed. You were quiet at this point. You weren't speaking at all. Got you undressed, and I just stayed with you, and we just lay on the bed, and you just sort of went between crying and being really quiet and crying, being really quiet, and we weren't really talking.
Yeah. I don't remember any of that.
No. And then the next day I phoned sort of 111, and I tried to get in touch with the Outlaw surgery, and you were just sleeping, and you slept until we decided I knew I was going to take you home. And then on the way home we stopped by
Portfarias, yeah,
just to walk along the beach a little bit, and you weren't really speaking, you weren't really talking at this point. So, and then just to sort of give a bit of context to things that were happening, your GP was brilliant, got you on some...
Yeah, we went and saw the doctor almost
straight away,
didn't we? Yeah. Got
you on some sertraline, they got you into a CBT programme with a support nurse, and...
that all happened very quickly. I had a mental health assessment with a nurse, and was put onto the sertraline very quickly. Yeah, and a couple of appointments with the doctor sort of checking in on you. We then just sort of stopped, and we just stayed at home for nearly a couple of months, really. And you don't remember much about this time, but no.
If we're talking about going back to kind of your relationship with music and creativity, that all stopped. That all stopped completely. You stopped singing around the house, which for me was just really odd. You didn't have music on in any room that you were in. Again, you've always got music on in every room that you're in. I was trying to get you to, I think some of the CBT was this sort of journaling, and you couldn't write. You couldn't physically do the handwriting, but you couldn't think of words to say. You'll find it really difficult to have any expression.
It was really difficult to. I know that you were really keen for me to do the journaling and stuff.
It's one of those things.
Yeah, no, it's quite an obvious thing that it was so difficult to do, because it's really hard to write about your feelings and all that sort of stuff when you have utter contempt for yourself. It's really difficult to do that, to sort of so today I did this and I felt that, and you're writing it, you're just thinking, fuck off. Do you know what I mean? Like, to myself, it's just like, fuck off, you're pathetic. And so you don't really want to journal. No.
But those feelings of, it was one of the quietest couple of months I've ever had in my entire life, and you as well. I was trying to get you to play the guitar. You didn't want to do that. You didn't want to. You just didn't. You didn't want to. You didn't read. You weren't reading novels, or you weren't. So sometimes we read to each other. You didn't want me to read to each other. I think I started off with really short poetry when we were going to sleep, and that was you almost couldn't bear that. You didn't want to. I'd say, shall I read a little bit of, I don't know, I was going through a UA Fanthorpe phase, and you were like, no. And I'd go, but this is lovely, read this. Don't want to,
but
don't
I didn't want to feel anything.
You couldn't feel anything.
I didn't want to feel anything because I've been so, part of the breakdown is just feeling so overwhelmed by emotions, and that's why sertraline works in that context, because it just dulls everything and you stop feeling so much.
It takes the extremes.
It takes the extremes out, and that's why I didn't want to listen. Because music makes me feel things. Listening to poetry makes you feel things. I didn't want to feel anything. I just wanted to be numb. I just wanted to be numb for a while and just not have any of that.
The only thing you could do was take Sydney, who was our friend's dog, who we started walking before COVID.
The dog we co-parent.
And their owners sort of say we co-parent. You could take Sydney for a walk and we could go for walks, and that was it.
Yeah.
You couldn't speak to anybody you found the phone really difficult, even more difficult than usual because you're not a lover of the phone. But all of that gone, even television, when we love a movie and we love a box set, but you basically just watch The Office.
Yeah, I watched the US Office, and I think I watched it all from start to finish for the third time, and that's quite telling because it's brilliant, but after the third time, you're not really doing it for the jokes. You're doing it because it's familiar, and you're doing it because it's safe.
Weirdly, though, of course, you still worked. Didn't you have a couple of days off and went back to work? You didn't want to take any time off work.
Yeah, well,
work became a bit of an anchor.
Yeah, so work. Yeah, work. That's an interesting one because work. It's going to sound really bad. Work doesn't elicit strong emotions in me. I'm good at my job and I'm competent, and work was a safe place for me to be because I could still function as a human on some level, and I could still be useful because I hate not being useful, and I could still do something, but it wasn't going to make me feel bad or feel excited or because it was a safe place for me to be,
it's a place you valued as well.
Yeah.
You said you're not just competent, you're good at your job, and you've got nice teammates and you work well with them. And
I'm quite sort of weirdly proud of the fact that most people in work had no idea that anything had happened. I told the people I work closest with, but I think for most people they wouldn't have known that anything was wrong, which was good because I wasn't bothering anyone.
Were you ashamed?
Yes, I still am. I am ashamed of it because, and again, and this is why it's. I know this isn't right, but there, I have such a nice life. I still don't feel like I have the right to have any mental health problems. There are people with much, much worse situations than I who don't break down and cry on Bone Maris Pier for no reason. It's I don't know, it's such a difficult thing to understand. There is still, I understand it far better now because of the therapy that I've gone through and sort of learning about it a bit more. But there is still this part of me that is, embarrassed about it, ashamed of it, because I still don't really understand the reason for it. And I sort of I can rationalise in my head, we can talk more about the CBT and stuff in a future episode. But the CBT told me, what if there isn't a cause? What if there is just, and it's not that there's not a cause, but I think the way the CBT therapist put it, which was really useful, was what if you found out what the cause is and it's not something you can do anything about? And that was quite helpful, because it helps you to stop looking for a cause. But it's really difficult to not do that. It's really difficult to not think about, well, what is wrong with me? Do you know what I mean? And also it ties in with getting better as well. It's sort of like, because I feel much better now, right? It's not gone away completely, but I feel much better now. And I was really confident in coming off the sertraline at a certain point as well. I was just like, I've had enough of that. I'm not going to do that anymore. And I sort of had this weird point at one point where I just said, right, I'm not going to feel anxious anymore. Which is not a thing that works necessarily, but I did sort of make a decision. But I don't know why I'm better, because I don't know why it happened in the first place. I know there is, I've gone through therapy, so that helped. I went on the sertraline, which helped. I understand more now, better than ever before, the value of getting out and doing some exercise. Going climbing with my best mate Dave, going climbing with my brother, those sorts of things are the things that have a tangible impact, a beneficial impact on your mental health. And it's not rocket science, is it? But it still doesn't. There is still this thing in the back of my head which is sort of like, well, yeah, but why did it happen in the first place?
Why do you think in those few months directly afterwards that you weren't singing, weren't playing, couldn't write?
The only way I can describe it, and this ties in with the medication, with the sertraline, is I just didn't want to feel anything. Because I've been so overwhelmed by emotion, I just didn't want to feel anything. And I think what ties in with that is getting better is the point where I did want to feel things again, and that's why I came off the sertraline. And I know I'm a really emotional person now. I know it better now. I am an emotional person.
You've always been a very emotional person.
But now I understand it a bit better. Now I understand that I do have these quite extremes of emotion. Yes. When I'm happy, I'm very, very happy. Yes. I laugh at things very easily, and then when I get down, I get really, really down. And that it was the point where I wasn't afraid of that anymore, and I was okay to feel it again. Was the point where I sort of thought I was getting better.
But you think, so physically picking up a guitar, physically trying to write about how you felt, was not an option, was it?
No.
Is that same thing about, it a bit like when you sing about journaling, your songs are always a little bit about you, and there's always something of yourself in them, so... was the worthlessness? Who'd want to hear
the worthlessness? Certainly.
Who'd want to hear this anyway?
Yeah. And what's weird about that is the worthlessness and the who wants to hear this anyway is that's never gone away.
No.
And that is still. So I've just released a song right now. I've got. It was literally released. We're doing this on Sunday. It was released on Friday on general release. One of my new songs or new recording, One Night Stand, and I'm promoting that and stuff, and this is again something we'll probably discuss more in the future. It's sort of like, and I'm promoting that, and I'm telling everybody to go and listen to it. And there is this deep core of me that says, why would anybody care?
So why are we doing this?
And why are we doing this as well? Yeah, it's the same thing. I feel really, I'm a little bit embarrassed about this video just because I don't think anybody really cares about. So people care about the way they feel. So I suppose the reason I want to do this is because it might help other people.
Mm.
It might help other people to see somebody who has a cushy life, an easy thing, an easy ride in life, and who's very good looking, who sorry, I couldn't help it, have mental health problems, and understand that it's a thing that happens and can happen to anybody. So maybe that's why I'm doing this. But there is this deep core of me that says nobody cares. Nobody's interested in my emotions or my feelings, and it's not just me going, oh, nobody cares. It's sort of like it's nobody cares, and rightly so.
It's a nihilistic.
Maybe it is nihilistic, but it's not that I feel sorry for myself because I think that nobody cares about me or my emotions or my songs or my gigs. I understand completely why people wouldn't care. Does that make sense?
Okay.
So it makes perfect sense to me that, you know, nobody would go and stream my song and listen to it. So
Not
why
because
would
of the
they?
song, but because
No,
this
I
is
think the
you.
song's brilliant. I wouldn't have written it if I didn't. Do you know what I mean? I've done a brilliant job of recording it as well. And Rick White plays an amazing guitar solo on it. It's fantastic. But it's me.
It's you.
And it's
no
it's
one
my
cares
stuff, so
about
why
you.
would anybody care about it? I know that sounds really depressing and morose, but I genuinely don't get it.
It's been a very common theme the whole way through, that one of the ways in which for you the depression manifests is an utter feeling of worthlessness, that you don't matter in anybody's world. You know, that was one of the things that you would often say. You know, you didn't even think you mattered to me. That was one thing. So I can see, in some ways, there's a sort of logic to that, isn't it? If you think that you don't matter enough to matter to anyone, which is, as someone who loves you more than anything else in the world, that's really difficult to hear. That when the person that you're with and that I share my life with doesn't recognise how much you mean to me, right?
It's not.
But
that's not quite that. It's sort of that. I don't know. It's
Well, that's
quite
how I
hard.
feel.
Yeah. No, fair enough. But it's quite.
It's really difficult. I can't reassure you. I couldn't
No.
reassure you of that. I couldn't.
And the thing is, if
reassure
you ask me, if you say, if somebody said, "Do you think anybody loves you?" Like, yes, of course they do. Dawn loves me. My mum loves me. My brother loves me. My friends love me.
Yeah.
But there is this thing
Yeah.
deep inside me that says, actually, nobody really cares. And it's not just nobody really cares. It's sort of like, and they're right not to care.
Yeah. Okay.
And I'm sort, I suppose maybe this is the underlying problem, is that I don't think I'm wrong. I think it is true. I don't know.
So in this particular episode, what we wanted to do was to sort of paint a picture of your musical life before the breakdown, the build up to it, and to chart a little bit about how your mental health changes your relationship with music. And when if I sort of said to you now, would you say you're back to where you were before?
In terms of creativity and music and stuff, I'd say I'm much better. I mean, I'm better even than before the breakup, because I've just released a song. I've got another one ready to go. That's already finished and complete and ready to release. And I've just written a brand new song that I've started recording.
You did a gig.
I did a gig, even though I've actually got a broken leg at the moment.
No, but I was thinking about your other gig at the Saddle.
I went and played a gig of my own stuff, didn't I?
Which is the first time in ages.
With Les, supporting Abdi Jabbar acoustically, and I'm playing with them again. I'm playing Batitude in December. So yeah, and I'm gigging more. I've got, I've sorted my website out. I'm doing a lot more creatively at the moment.
And so, does it feel? It's still that battle that you've just talked about. I don't want to use the word battle, actually. There's still that sort of challenge to think about why this matters. But it sounds like you've still got the energy, and you still feel well enough to be able to do that, even though those questions loom really large.
Yeah, I suppose fundamentally the reason I write, perform, release music is because I think it's the one thing I'm really good at. I talked about my job, and I am good at my job, I think. But it's about having a talent, isn't it? You want to do, if you think you've got a talent, then you want to do something with it. And I do think this is weird. I know it doesn't make a lot of sense to say that, but I do think I've got a talent, and I do think I'm good at this, and so I want to do something with it, because it feels stupid to not do something with it. And
because it's inside of you.
And it's because it's inside me, and I like doing it. I like writing and recording songs. I really, really enjoy doing it.
That's where you feel your most self.
Yeah, absolutely. And it's, it's fun. And like, we talked about that flow state of writing a song. That's one of the most exciting things in the world, is when you're writing a song and it starts to happen, it starts to come together, and it happens to you and all that sort of thing. That's really exciting. I want that to happen. I want to do that. But that happens at the same time as this weird thing underlying that just says, yeah, but nobody cares.
But you are getting better.
Yeah, I am getting better.